Good morning, everybody. For the benefit of those listening to the audio, my name's James, and you're listening to my YouTube live stream, Ask James, where I welcome questions from the YouTube community. This is being recorded just after 9 a.m. UK time on Friday, the 12th of March. As per usual on these streams before a game week deadline, and we'll start with the team news as we have it. For game week 28, Newcastle and Aston Villa kick off the game week tonight. Deadline is 6:30 p.m. UK time. Newcastle have Javier Manquillo available, expected. Federico Fernandez also fit. News on Almiron, St. Maximin and Callum Wilson are they expected to return after the international break. For Aston Villa, Sanson and Bertrand Traore were withdrawn against Wolves for precautionary reasons, but are expected to be okay. Grealish was ill this week to add to his injury, and Dean Smith says he's expected back next week against Tottenham. Leeds and Chelsea begin Saturday. Struijk, Fordham and Hernandez are all unavailable. Koch, Berardi and Shackleton are back. For Chelsea, press conference from Frank Lampard is today. I believe Thiago Silva is back fit. There's obviously doubts still around Tammy Abraham. Crystal Palace and West Brom's 3 o'clock Saturday. Roy Hodgson and Slaven Bilic both have press conferences later today. Wilfried Zaha and Jeffrey Schlupp obviously returned as substitutes at Tottenham last weekend. Eberechi Eze was withdrawn at half-time. I'm unaware of any injury, but it's a little bit surprising that they took him off. Expect an update later on Tyreek Mitchell and Nathaniel Klein. No expected new issues for West Brom. Everton play Burnley at 5:30 on Saturday. James Rodriguez is nearly fit every single week. Expect an update later today from Carlo Ancelotti. Abdoulaye Doucouré is expected to be out until April. We do have team news already in on Burnley. Charlie Taylor has yet another hamstring tweak and is unlikely to be risked. Expect Eric Peters to play at left back. Jack Cork is considered a major doubt. Johan Berg Goodmanson is fine after fears he had a setback against Arsenal. Robbie Brady is being monitored and Ashley Barnes is progressing, but not expected to be involved. For Fulham, no new issues reported again by Scott Parker. It's good news from them. Pep Guardiola's press conference is later today. Not anticipating any news that's new on Manchester City. Nathan Ake is now fit. So as far as I'm aware, the whole Manchester City squad is available for selection. Brendan Rodgers' press conference for Leicester is also later today. Not expecting James Maddison to be risked. Same probably applies to Johnny Evans as well, but Rodgers will update later today. Chris Wilder will give an update on Sheffield United's injury status also later today. Phil Jagielka will return from suspension. Arsenal Tottenham in the big North London derby on Sunday. Emil Smith-Rowe is expected to be available. I'm not aware of any new issues that came up from Arsenal's win in Greece last night. For Tottenham, many of you may have seen images floating around of Harry Kane with an ice pack on his knee. Don't worry about it. Listen, if his legs are attached, he'll play on Sunday, as far as I'm concerned. He should be absolutely fine. He took the ice pack off to walk down the tunnel at the end of the game. Didn't see any sign of a limp or anything. It'd be absolutely fine. I think he just took a heavy whack to the knee before he was replaced. Shouldn't be an issue there. Serge Aurier also returned last night. So it'll be a choice between him and Matt Doherty for who plays at right back. Giovanni Lo Celso's now got a bit of a back injury to go with the period that he's been out due to a hamstring complaint. He's not expected to be available for Sunday. For Manchester United, some bad news from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer following the draw with AC Milan last night. Anthony Martial has a hip injury and is almost certainly out. Marcus Rashford is a big doubt as well. And Edison Cavani has already been ruled out, leaving Manchester United a little bit short of forward options for the game with West Ham on Sunday. Dan Randolph has been ruled out by the Republic of Ireland until after the international break. Although he's obviously second choice to Lucas Fabianski in goal. Expect updates from David Moyes later today. Nuno Espirito Santo's press conference is later today. They end the game week against Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, who will also have a presser later. I can tell you the Wolves presser now. In any case, they have some issues. He won't tell you what it's about in relation to Nuno Santo. For Liverpool, Kabak returned in the Champions League, but Roberto Firmino missed out again. Every chance that Diogo Jota will play against his old team in a front three for Liverpool on Monday night. That's the team news as it stands. There are a number of press conferences still to go today, the last of which is scheduled for 1:30 p.m. So by 2:30 p.m. UK time, you should have all the information required with a few hours to spare before The deadline. Right. I'll be with you for the next 50 minutes or so. Let's get into the questions, see who's asking. Joe Gifford says, hi, James. Brilliant pod on Football Index the other day. Thoughts on what will happen next now that they have gone into admin? I appreciate all the feedback from everybody, by the way, on Monday's pod. It seems to come out quite well, which I'm pleased with, because it's easy to say we knew from Sunday morning we were probably going to be doing that pod, but there was a lot of football to watch on Sunday as well. So it wasn't just 24 hours of research. It was more like about an hour of research for both of us once the football had finished on Sunday. What happens next? Well, as kind of suggested on that podcast on Monday, they're fucked. The company will cease to exist unless it's got a takeover by a rival company who then invests the money back in. That's the only way I can see the traders are going to probably get their money out of this nightmare scenario. The one thing that the statement from Football Index at least does last night for those who are invested in the company, at least gives them a little bit of clarity. The suggestion from that statement was there'll be a further update in the next 10 days or so in terms of what's going to happen next. I hope the Gambling Commission step in some way, but I'm not too expectant on that front, particularly as there's obviously lots of questions being asked about them in the first instance as to how they gave Football Index the legislation to trade as a betting company within the United Kingdom. So what happens next? I don't know. It's a question, in all honesty, that Suj will be able to answer better than me, but we should have some more clarity, certainly within the next 2 weeks, hopefully, for traders. Stian Bostel says, with no wildcard left, I'm going Bale or Aubameyang for game week 29 in for Salah. It means I can't get to Kevin De Bruyne after 29, though. Thoughts? Already have Son and Kane. Well, of course you can get to Kevin De Bruyne. You just have to take a -4 to do it. City have Leicester in game week 30. So I don't believe you'd probably be any great rush to do that. It's always reactive after the midweek. Say, oh my God, Kevin De Bruyne back to his best. It was only 7 days ago. Everyone's telling me that he's shit and he's past it. Exaggerating, obviously. But there were plenty of people out there saying that City were being badly affected by Kevin De Bruyne's return. So recency bias suggests, oh my God, I have to get him back. I don't quite feel that way at the moment myself. It's easier for me to say as someone who's wildcarding in 31, if I want to get him over that period, then obviously I can. Presumably they will qualify for the next stage of the Champions League. And by the time they next play in that, they could have extended their lead at the top of the Premier League, which means all the eggs go in the Champions League. What do you want to do with City assets then? I don't know. De Bruyne, when he's fit, I think historically we know will play 90% of the games for Manchester City, even if they're pushing really hard in the Champions League. That's the most likely occurrence. So he's safer than most from rotation should they go deep in the Champions League. But if you have to go without, you have to go without. Can't have everyone, can we? In terms of Bale or Aubameyang, I think if I was buying one today, it would probably more likely be Aubameyang, personally. I would particularly advise that for those who don't have the second wild card left. I actually think it's a safer play if it's affordable. Yes, his price is too much based on what we've seen this season, but that's the way I'd prefer to go. Arsenal have, from game week 31 onwards, clearly, by a distance, in my opinion, the best running of any team. Now, of course, they're highly likely to be in the next round of Europa League as well, but as Adam Pritchard covered on yesterday's Clash of the Correspondents, he was quite confident that players like Aubameyang, in spite of European progression, will still play regularly in the Premier League. So that should give a little bit of confidence into that potential selection. Holler Stamos says, Saka, Tierney or Lingard from game week 29 to 38 would be one of the two Arsenal players, definitely, in my opinion. But again, because of what I've said about the run that they've got. If it's only short-term thinking, then Lingard not too bad. Arsenal, Wolves, Leicester, Newcastle, the 4 afterwards. But then even Arsenal's 4, West Ham, Liverpool, Sheffield United, Fulham, doesn't seem any worse, in my opinion. So I think that the personal preference for myself, in my own circumstance, would probably be Tierney. And I say that not because I think he's a particularly better option than Saka. He's probably there's other more interesting assets in the midfield area where defensively at the moment, there's not. So, for example, to be honest, I think if you can go Aubameyang rather than Saka, if the money's not an issue, again, it's something we discussed on that podcast yesterday, I would go Aubameyang over Saka. Clearly, Saka at his price versus Aubameyang at his price, clearly Saka is the better choice. But we're pretty confident that Aubameyang will outscore Saka between now and the end of the season. So on that basis, I'd have to say Tierney. Angus McPhail says, hi, James. I know you've been asked this before, but what would be your England starting lineup for the Euros? And who are a couple of dark horses to make the 23-man squad for the tournament for you? Dark horses would be tough. Perhaps there's something we can't see, like Fikayo Tomori at AC Milan, for example. I say we can't see. A lot of people would have watched him yesterday. But the majority of Premier League fans may have not watched the game and therefore may be unaware of what he is or isn't doing out there. I can't see any late surprises, to be honest. I would be stunned if there's someone who emerges suddenly, like Che Adams scores 12 in the rest of the season. I'd be really surprised if someone like that suddenly emerged to go, pick me. I can't see that. And that's because the depth of the quality in particularly the attacking areas of that squad are so deep. People like Harvey Barnes, even fully fit, was going to be touch and go, I think, if he was going to be in the squad. And he's now probably more unlikely than likely, I think, to make the final cut. So if you consider someone like that who's been excellent for this season is possibly going to miss out, James Maddison's another name. It's probably going to be touch or go, whether he's in the squad or not. So to see someone new emerging, don't see it. In terms of a team, well, I'd pick a back four. I'd play 4-1-4-1, most likely. I'd go for it. We've got too many good attacking players. So in summary, it would be something like Henderson, James, Stones, Maguire, Chilwell, Rice/Henderson, Jordan Henderson, obviously. But I think for the 4-1-4-1 itself, I think Declan Rice actually at the moment would probably be a better call. Not that I think he's particularly a better player than Henderson. It's just on that system. Ahead of him, I'd want Grealish, Foden, Rashford, two of Rashford, Sterling, Sancho. Take your pick for the wide positions. Harry Kane up front. That's how I'd want to play. But Gareth will play 5-2-3, mate. Mushir Hodder, good morning, James. How much do you reckon you would cost in FPL? Oh, I'd be a 4.5 million midfielder. And by now, I'd probably be 4.2. You won't get many attacking returns from me, mate. Angus also says, do you think more English managers, particularly the younger ones, should go and try it overseas in the way we've seen an increasing number of young English players do? Yes, that would be great. There have been one or two more cases of it over the last decade or so. But if take an example like Scott Parker, who's obviously doing great at Fulham at the moment, is the next step for him if or when he wants to leave Fulham, which, listen, let's be honest, Fulham, if he's going to be a top manager, he's not going to be at Fulham for the next 20 years. What's the better career path for him after he leaves Fulham? Is it to go and manage maybe someone like a West Ham? Or is it to go and manage, I don't know, like a Sevilla or a Valencia or someone like that? Or go to Germany? I think that's very dependent on the characteristics of the individual. Like, for example, does he speak foreign languages or anything like that? Scott Parker hasn't previously played abroad. So I think that sort of thing is important. English people generally probably pick up foreign languages not as well on a whole, as well as other people from around Europe. I mean, you go to Holland, they speak English better than English people, right? So I think that's quite important. But we have seen people do it. Chris Coleman was abroad. Obviously, David Moyes has I've forgotten, but I think they were at the same club, weren't they? Real Sociedad from memory. Obviously, we had Gary Neville in Valencia, which obviously didn't work out. But I think English coaches are more prepared for it. I think in most cases, though, it's probably a starter job rather than a second or a third job. And therefore, you need some coaching out there and you need to have prior understanding of the language, etc. in most cases. We know that it can work. We've seen managers come here, like Pochettino, for example, couldn't speak English at first. Marcelo Bielsa still uses an interpreter, although I suspect he probably can speak English quite well. But yeah, I mean, definitely coaching abroad is going to improve your outlook. No doubt about it. As Thrifty says, hi, James. Was thinking of Salah to Bale, but a little hesitant now. Thoughts? Cheers, mate. Have a good one. Well, I've got Salah and I won't be buying Bale this week. I've wrestled with the idea of actually captaining Mo Salah this week. I'm going to go Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, which no one else is going to do, and I completely accept that. But it's the move that I'm going to do this week. I think Salah's probably going to be my vice. But I can't say to anybody at the moment, don't sell Mohamed Salah, particularly with a blank in 29. We've got Arsenal in game week 30 as well. Is another tough fixture. So if somebody wants to sell him, I think it's fine. Would I rush to go from Salah to Bale this particular week? No, that's not part of my agenda. Stian Bosdale, Stade Solbakken came out publicly and said he won't support a boycott of the World Cup. Not that I think we will even qualify. Are you doing a pod on the subject in the future, do you think? It's something we might look at the international break or the summer. It's in relation to there's been some suggestion in Norway that they might pull out of the Qatar World Cup. We did cover this on a Patreon pod for a question we had on Monday, saying it's highly, highly unlikely that nations are going to pull out for a number of factors. Buenas in says, morning, James. Start one out of Bamford, Cresswell, and Antonio. I know your dilemma there, mate, but it would be Patrick Bamford for me, mate. Austin Laley, morning, James. How many signings do you think Spurs are from being title contenders next season? What position and who should they realistically sign? How many players are we short of title contenders? 8. To actually challenge for the title, not for the top 4, but to challenge for the title, we're about 8 players short. So anything behind Kane and Son needs to be signed, basically. It's too much to detail here. FPL Invincible says, morning, James. I hope you can read my question. Best regards, Emil. What's the question, mate? Good morning, Emil. Oh, I know why you've put that, because you thought you couldn't get into the chat. Well, I can see you there. You're there, mate. Jay Lodge. Hi, James. Who's your best and worst football commentator? Thanks, mate. Good luck. We had Peter Drury do the Tottenham game last night, and I think he's probably the best around at the moment. Definitely Gary Neville for the co-commentator job. Worst. There's many of the analysis I just can't stand. Let's volume down a little bit. Worst. Okay, now. Whoever's probably the worst main commentator, I probably don't know their name with the best respect. Steve McManaman's brain damage, isn't he? Robbie Savage too. Some of the things Savage says is actually all right. McManaman is. And Michael Owen put you to sleep when he is a co-commentator. Jean-Philippe P. Good morning, James. Gunners fan here. Should I hedge my bets and captain Harry or go all out and get in Aubameyang to captain him as per COTC? Can't wish you luck either, but love all your content. Thanks, Jean-Philippe. You should go Aubameyang, mate. It's your club. If you're confident, do it. Donna Boyle's in, says, morning all and good luck. Vish says, why are... No, I'm not reading that out, mate. Andy Marshall, any news on Kane? Yes, Andy, covered in the opening. I want to say credits. How stupid is this? Covered at the start in the team news, mate. Craig Davis says, hi, James. Should we be wary of Fulham recent defensive stats? Absolutely should be wary of Fulham's recent defensive stats. Very capable of stopping Manchester City tomorrow. I think you'll see a surprising correct score prediction on my deadline stream at 5:30 today, because I really do think that Fulham can get something from that game. I'd recommend, for anybody who wants a kind of direct answer to that, not to repeat myself, but I'd really recommend my analysis of Manchester City versus Manchester United from Sunday on Tuesday's podcast, season 4, episode 36, which is really important in terms of possible expectations of what happens in that game tomorrow. And the key is about Fulham being brave defensively or not, in terms of their starting positions. And if they are, I actually think they can win the game. Very good defensively. Doesn't mean, I mean, look, De Bruyne, in a week where the captaincy is really open, De Bruyne, I think particularly, is still a really great choice, having been replaced early in the Southampton game. I think that's the City standout. If you want a captain De Bruyne, I think he's one of the best choices this week. That would be my opinion. Gundogan, less so from a captaincy perspective. Raheem Sterling, if you want to keep punishing yourself, is likely to play, I would think. But make no mistake, they're very good, Fulham. Very good, and particularly defensively. Lamichi says, hi, James. Best 1 week differential punt for a striker and defender in game week 19. Well, game week 19 was some time ago, my friend. I'm going to guess that you mean game week 29 for next week. It's a differential punt for a striker and a defender in game week 29. Differential, I can't recommend it, but Neil Maupay, Brighton, possibly because of the fixture. Defensively, any Fulham player. preferably Adebayo then Anderson would be the way I'd advise that. Adam Keener says, morning, James. Struggling with my Ings replacement. What would you suggest? I've got Watkins and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and free hitting in game week 29. So that opens up more possibilities for you. To be honest, I would have put Calvert-Lewin at the top of that list. I'm glad that you've already got him now. I just have to look at it and go, their next two fixtures are Burnley at home and Crystal Palace at home. And with that in mind, Adam, it will scare you, but the right answer could well be Richarlison, mate. Failing that, Che Adams was great in midweek. The way he took the goal that was disallowed suggested the player has got his confidence back following his brilliant goal at Sheffield United. He did score in the game at Etihad as well. So I think Che Adams. I recommend on the pod Tuesday about Nathan Tellers, a 4.3 million midfielder, but I was a bit concerned that he came on and played wide on the left of midfield. I'd find that a little bit off-putting from going into him now. So Che Adams, decent alternative. Failing that, the best of all, if it's price affordable, and there isn't money, no object on it, is Timo Werner, who I think is one of the best captaincy options this week and also in game week 30. So if money's not a problem, Adam, genuinely, Timo Werner. Knock yourself out. You'll hate it, but it could pay good. Bets 1604. Hi, James. Who's your favourite Spurs player from every position from any era? Well, I don't think it's right for me to judge pre my era. So I'll stick to the players from my era because I think in every case, were I to name players from Tottenham's history, I would pick players based from previous eras who had won more trophies and stuff. But from my era, goalkeeper would still be Hugo. It's not even close. Defender would be Ledley. It's not even close. Midfielder, can I class Bale as a midfielder? And I mean the kind of 2013 version of Gareth Bale. I guess by that point, we're probably calling him a forward, aren't we? So I would say Paul Gascoigne, and up front, Harry Kane. And literally no doubt about that now. Good morning, Ricky Saunders, who was on yesterday's COTC. Him and Adam did a great job on that podcast. It was longer than intended. None of us intended it to be that long. But we just let the conversation go on stuff that was let's be honest, a lot more important than fantasy. Aaron Lagle, my Leicester correspondent, says, morning, Gaffer. Hope you're well. If Mourinho were to leave, who would you like to be your next manager other than Poch? I mean, it's too soon for Poch to come back anyway. So Julian Nagelsmann is the name that's been mentioned most from Red Bull Leipzig, but I have stopped thinking about it, Aaron, over the last couple of weeks because I think Mourinho is probably a win on Sunday away from shutting up all the critics. If he wins that game on Sunday, then he's got freedom for at least another month or so, certainly until that cup final comes around. So it would probably be Nagelsmann for me, but then that would need a major overhaul of the players that we've got, which, I mean, we need anyway, because Nagelsmann wants to play a very different system, which is primarily normally a three at the back. So we haven't got one good centre-back, so no chance for us finding three anytime soon. It will take a long time of adjustment. I think from the domestic league, I do think Brendan Rodgers would come because I think the money and the potential of the club, i.e. the money he could earn himself, he probably would come, actually. I like Rodgers. I don't know if he could take us to the top, but there isn't an expectation on winning the league at the moment. I think while Guardiola's Manchester City are back in the sort of form that they're in. Aaron will be one, by the way, our Leicester correspondent, one of 8 correspondents on during the international break. We'll be looking at Leicester's fixture against Manchester City ahead of game week 30 is one of those 4 scheduled podcasts. Matt J says, morning, James. I still have Grealish as I'm playing through 29 and free hit 30-31. I'm concerned it'll only be on the bench for 29. Time to get rid. If you've come this far, Matt, you probably keep in as long as you've got a suitable bench. Be a great little differential for you next week. I think if I had him at the moment, I'd be keeping. Although it is a little bit concerning that Dean Smith's message is could be next week, could be next week, could be next week. Feels like it's ongoing at the moment. I think I would keep personally, but it's very dependent on what your bench is, to be honest, Matt. Joe Knight says, hi, James. FPL Rugby here. Who do you think will be the best 2 midfield options to go for in my game week 30 wildcard? Mahrez, Maddison, Barnes, Mount, or Rashford? From those, I mean, Maddison will probably be fit. Harvey Barnes, I wouldn't expect to be fit. Mason Mount I would put in now. Is a really good choice. Rashford, ongoing concerns with potential injuries would be off-putting. So Mahrez, like I said, Mahrez and Mount from that actually, Joe. But you might feel very different by the time it comes round. Adash says, good morning, mate. I've tripled up on Spurs with some Bale and Captain Harry Kane. Please smash Tim Kunis this weekend. Good luck. I will take a 1-0 victory with an own goal right now, mate. Blake Young says, hey, James, got 2 transfers. Should I trade out Stones or Cancelo for Veltman to prep for 29 or burn it? Don't burn. Veltman, don't burn. There's a play on that if you didn't get it, guys. Wouldn't burn it. The only issue with those particular 2 players you have is they'll probably both play tomorrow. So, as I often say, find a different solution. So, what other players are you looking to get for game week 29? Can you make that happen first? I.e., are you in need of a goalkeeper, for example? That would be, if rather than burn, that's always the easy place to look. I'm going to burn a transfer. Can I improve my goalkeepers in any way? Is therefore always a really good place to look. But I'd go back and reconsider what players are you targeting next week and why do you not want them this week? I do think ideally in the case of those particular Manchester City players, you're probably better off making that move next week. Bills Bob, who finishes 18th in the Premier League? Well, if I say West Bromwich Albion, that'll confuse everybody, won't it? Fuck me. These 2 games for Newcastle are absolutely huge. Bookies will favour that to be Newcastle now. Fulham are now actually odds against to get relegated. Newcastle would kind of slightly odds on / evens to get relegated. So I'll side with that and I'll go Newcastle at the moment. Next 2 games, including the game tonight, absolutely huge. Sagnick says, sell Stones for Alonso, James. Well, I can't see any want for that unless you're free hitting in game week 29, unless it seems a more reasonable idea. But does Alonso play tomorrow against Leeds? Does he play against West Bromwich Albion in game week 30? That's the problem with particularly Chelsea wing-backs. James, Chilwell, Alonso. Where are you at? As Piliqueta is the one who looks absolutely nailed after Rudiger and Mount got the rest in midweek. Mount, I think, was rested because he's suspended for the Atletico game in the Champions League. Therefore, Tuchel wanted to look at a team without him and how it performed. I think in Rudiger's case, it was a rest. And we're all assuming as Piliqueta's nailed now, but against Leeds' high intensity and energy, could it be that this weekend the back 3 is Zuma and Christensen / Thiago Silva and Rudiger? And as Piliqueta doesn't play, I think actually for this game week, that's a possibility, actually. So I can't recommend the buying of Marcos Alonso. Unfortunately, you want to punt it as a differential, be my guest, my friend. Joe Knight says, James, you a sausage or a bacon sandwich, man, brown or ketchup? So the answer to that, look at me. The answer's both. Generally sausage over bacon and definitely a ketchup, man. Zane Patel says, hello, James. In the market for a 4.1 million defender. Nathaniel Phillips or Amati, valid options. Listen, Nat Phillips, no. Just no. Can I see a partnership emerging between Kabak and Phillips? Possibly, because I think with Henderson's injury, there's a desperation to get Fabinho back in midfield now. They realise that it's almost not worthwhile having 2 problems. Have 1 problem. Have 1 bigger problem than 2 smaller problems. That seems to be the intention I've got, is that Fabinho might go back into midfield, which increases the chance of Phillips, but I can't be advising that personally. Amati at Leicester, not for me. I think it's dependent on upcoming injuries. Obviously, look, great fixture this week, and every chance he'll play because obviously Evans is a doubt. He could play right side of a back 3. He could play right back in a back 4. There's every chance you'll get the game out of him this week. Personally, it depends what you want from the player. You're targeting a 4.1 million defender. Are you desperate for said player to play? If the answer is no, then the answer is it probably doesn't matter, and Armati could well do you an immediate return this weekend, and therefore that would probably be the choice. I would rather get up to 4.3s and the likes of Joel Veltman and stuff personally. Alistair Coper says, morning, James. Am I safe in saying you suggest Vestergaard ahead of Rafinha and Bamford despite the Leeds fixture? No. I'd pick Bamford and Rafinha over Vestergaard this week, mate. I think Chelsea will win tomorrow, and I think Southampton will win on Sunday. But I would go the attacking players. Honestly, you should know me by now, my friend. Don't get twisted. I think Brighton will score at the weekend as well. By the way, I'll tell you now, my prediction will be on the streams 2-1 Southampton. Nasser said thoughts on Ricardo Pereira captain. I mean, that's a differential shout, isn't it? I don't hate it because of the opponent, as kind of just said. He could play right midfield or right wing back. You'd be gutted if he played left wing back, I think. Yeah, I don't hate it. Listen, this week captaincy is really open. I'm not going to tell you who's the best choice around. Of course, I'm not. But captaincy is really open this week. So if you want to take a week where you want to take a punt, by all means do. I think clearly because of effective ownership, etc., Bruno is still the standout. But then they've got them attacking injuries to deal with. No Cavani, probably no Martial, possibly no Rashford as well. That's got to be an impact. Just on winning penalties. Rashford and Martial are the main two for winning penalties, aren't they? So, I mean, those players missing is not going to be good news for Bruno. I think if I had him, I would just stick the armband on him personally. But there you go. This week's really open. We've spoken about Fulham strengths earlier. So there's no guarantee of a haul from a Kevin De Bruyne or someone like that. It's really open. If you've got someone like that who you want to punt on, be my guest. When I say I'm probably going Dominic Calvert-Lewin captain, I realise the majority of people be going, you're nuts, James. So it's fine. This is the punt that I'm going to take. So if you want to punt on Pereira, I'm okay with it. Vince Bruno Mason Grealish. That's a name, not a question. I just brought in Bale for Salah yesterday. Do you think I'll be laughing or will Salah hurt me? I don't think you'll be laughing. Personally. Maneuver says, couple of Sky questions. One, no captaincy for Monday is skipping out of the question. So to cover that first, I don't, for Sky Fantasy, have coverage for Monday either. I am, as I've detailed on the Sky Pods, I'm going to buy Rui Patricio in advance of Wolves' fixture swing and give him the captaincy on Monday. And Maneuver's second question is, with us being blind to fixtures, is it worth getting players from a wider range of teams if moving off City? Yes, possibly. But I think if you're moving off City, you want to go to what's immediately in front of you. And obviously, there's 4 teams that immediately appear on Sunday, which are Arsenal, Tottenham, Brighton and West Ham as the immediate, because they play Sunday and then obviously play again in match day 29. So you know you're getting at least 2 fixtures immediately after the City players. And of course, Wolves and Liverpool if you need to buy for Monday as well. So yeah, it's kind of target them if you want to come off immediately. I don't, unless you want to go on the day to Leeds or Fulham players when they play each other next Friday night, then it can't spread too far. So you're spreading across them. So maybe, for example, you don't have West Ham coverage and you want to look at them, or maybe you don't have Arsenal coverage and you want to look at them. But yes, it's not the worst idea to try and spread. You've got my spreadsheet anyway. Have a look at it, mate. I updated an April difficulty tracker for you. El Potter says, hi, James. If you had to choose between Havertz or Alonso, the Chelsea LB left back, who would you add in your FPL team? I think you're telling me Alonso's a Chelsea left back. Yeah, Alonso's never been a left back. A winger. Who would you add in your FPL team out of those? I'd find someone else, mate. I know Ted at Rotation FPL's quite high on the prospects of Havertz and has been all season, although he hasn't performed yet. Monday was definitely his best showing against Everton. To be honest, I'd be surprised if he plays at Leeds tomorrow. And I would probably expect Chilwell to play left back as well. I can't advise either of them. Maneuver has a third Sky question. Is Robertson, Trent Alexander on bonkers for Sky? He's not bonkers, but I wouldn't be going anywhere near it, mate. Stian Bosdale, Gundogan seems to be more of a central defensive midfielder now with KDB back. That will certainly reduce his goal threat. Seems that from the performance against Southampton. Don't read too much into the Manchester United game because of the counter-attacking power. And I know Gundogan got in the box once on Wednesday night. He also scored. I think that will rotate. When Jesus or Aguero's not playing, they're going to constantly mix and match who plays in that system. I think in the case of the Southampton game, there were positives for Southampton in spite of the fact of conceding 5. And one of those was that when they attacked, it looked like we're going to score goals. So there had to be a bit more holding hands for Fernandinho in that area. Plus, of course, Cancelo wasn't playing, so you didn't have him coming off the touchline within possession either. Zinchenko does it a little bit, but it's not quite the same extent as Cancelo, obviously. So don't be quick to make assumptions, is all I'd say about that. I agree that, yes, it is beginning to look that way possibly, but it might just be that they're looking for a bit of control again in reaction to the bad performance of Manchester United. And to be honest, at his price, he's still a great little asset. So I wouldn't stress overly, but I would say he's not a captain option, in my opinion, this weekend. I don't think that would be the right call for anybody. Good morning to David Jones. Thank you. James Horan says, hey, James, hope you're well. What is the best 90-minute performance by a player you have ever witnessed live? I will say Gareth Bale versus Inter Milan. Not the first time when he got the hat-trick, the second time in the return game when he sent Mike on for the taxi. I think it's probably that. One I always reference is one that no one remembers, a performance by Dimitar Berbatov in a game at home to Bolton. We won 4-1 and he didn't even score, but he was sensational. Absolutely incredible. So I think that's the alternative one to throw out. There's a few United players who've come to Tottenham and have been like, wow. I mean, Messi for Barcelona against Tottenham at Wembley a couple of years ago. I remember a game that Paul Scholes had against us, I want to say in 2002-03, I think. Paul Scholes was so good in the middle of the pitch, I stopped watching the game. And because they were so dominant, I just watched Paul Scholes. I want to learn something from Paul Scholes. Brilliant player. Wilson NG, who do you think is the ultimate differential pick for game week 29? The ultimate differential pick. Aubameyang. There you go. 11, I am Ross Kenny. KDB, Bruno, or Kane as captain. From that lot, Bruno's going to be the safe way to go. If you got any doubts, just stick it on Bruno. It's the best way to go, mate. Ben Tyler, morning, James. Who do you think are the most overrated and underrated players in the Premier League? Oh my goodness. Wow, that's big. That's the sort of thing I feel like I need some some time to think on. Let's say underrated. Let's go because it's fresh and it's common at the moment. Joaquin Anderson at Fulham. He's on loan from Lyon. He won't be playing for Fulham next year. So, with respect to them, someone with a bit more dosh should be buying him, I think, and can pay him higher wages. So him overrated. Oh, dear. That's really tough to single someone out as overrated. I'll say Højbjerg. It's so harsh. It's so harsh. That's the sort of question I wish I had some prep for. Good question. Thank you. It's really tough to be singling out individual players. I'm just thinking through teams now, and I realise for the stream it's fine. It's blank for the audio day. So I'm going to go Anderson underrated, Højbjerg overrated. Højbjerg's been better. It was better against Palace than he was against Fulham. I do not need him going and pressing the ball tomorrow and getting sidestepped by Arsenal and having their front four running at our back four. I do not need that. I want him to protect me on Sunday. Dally Paul, what's best week to wildcard? I have 10 players for blank game week 29. Should I hold off to 31 or do it in 30? So there isn't a best. It's a case of what do you have. So I think from those 10 players, if you've got 9 players from Villa, Tottenham, Leeds, and they've all got good fixtures in 29, I think you're wildcarding in 31. Sorry, good fixture in 30. Well, I think wildcard in 31. If you have treble Arsenal that's playing Liverpool and treble Brighton that's playing Manchester United in game week 30, then I think you're going to wildcard in game week 30, aren't you? So it's dependent on what you've got in terms of what's the best solution. Vandred says, thoughts on Sanchez for 28-29. Looks solid, but Brighton always seem to fall short. If it's just those 2 games, yes, okay. I wouldn't anticipate a clean sheet at the weekend. The Newcastle game's hard to predict in advance of what happens this weekend, but I guess right now you'd say, yeah, strong possibility. That's okay. I guess defensive prospects for them, they probably have the best of it in 29. So if you're going that way, yeah, fine. I say Dubravka's an alternative, ironically, against a Villa tonight without Grealish, and then Brighton themselves next week, who we know Cal's arse banjo is difficult for them to put that together as a full sentence. So Dubravka is an alternative. Possibly looking at Sanchez because the cheapness of price as well. It's not the worst punt. It's not the worst punt. Good morning to FPL Escapades. Lewis Hawkins. Morning, James. Opinion on away goals counting extra time in the UEFA Champions League. Cheers. I think, yes, I'm still okay with it. And the reason for that being that the reason it exists is I think UEFA is uncomfortable with the idea that the teams play 90 minutes home, 90 minutes away, and then if extra time's needed, the team that's had the second leg at home, which is already considered a little bit of an advantage in most cases, then gets the extra 30 minutes at home as well. And that's why it still counts. I mean, what I would say is there is a strong case just to do away with away goals completely. Because I think it's not helpful for first legs where the priority for the home team in the first leg, certainly what I was brought up on, was get a lead as big as you can. That was the priority. The priority now for teams in first legs at home is don't concede. 0-0 at home in the first leg in Europe is generally considered not a bad result now. That can't be good for football. And I think it's probably time we did away with the away goals, personally. But under its current format, yes, I can understand why it still counts in extra time. And get that, I accept it. I think it's okay. Max says, evening here from Malaysia. Good evening to you, Mac. Dally Paul says, best co-commentator is Ali McCoy. He's been really good lately on Amazon, actually, Ali. Cambly Lobacter. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. Morning, boss. Appreciated a great correspondence talk this week. Thank you. If you fancy a drive up to Liverpool, bacon butty's ready in 10 minutes. It's problem with that, mate. I ain't going to be there in 10 minutes. Plus, I could go in my kitchen and be ready in 10 minutes. But I really appreciate the offer, mate. As long as it's ketchup and not brown sauce, of course. Badman says, hi, James. What are your thoughts on heading the ball linked to dementia? Can't see an answer myself. Wow, brilliant question. So we put this up as a suggested topic in the People's Poll a few times. The problem is, in terms of now, it's really difficult because obviously footballs, as in how heavy they are, etc., have developed massively from the cases of Jeff Astle in the 60s, etc. I mean, the ball they used to play with was so heavy. You'd almost argue in cases dangerous to head the ball if you go back far enough. Because the ball's now so light. That said, there are certain things like how fast they travel. I think they could travel faster, for example. So if you put your head in the way of the shots, it's quite dangerous. I respect players who do that. We can't eliminate heading from football, unfortunately. And obviously in the case of, say, what happened to poor Raul Jimenez, it's a head collision caused by going to head the ball, not the actual heading of the ball itself. And very similar, obviously, happened to Ryan Mason playing for Hull City at Chelsea, I want to say 5 years ago or so now, which obviously ended poor Ryan's career. I don't think there's a unique answer to it. I think the steps are being taken to, I think it's under 12s, isn't it? That to not head the ball in training, I believe. I would be honest, most kids 12 or under do not want to head a football. So I think that's a reasonable step to take. I think heading has become far less important in our game, generally speaking, to 20 years ago when everybody basically went quite direct regularly. So I don't think, unfortunately, to know if the lightness of the balls developing has helped players now, we're not going to really know till we have cases in the future. Unfortunately, I don't know what the answer to that question is, which is part why I wanted to investigate and do a podcast on it. I think the only thing we can do at the moment is make sure that players are getting properly assessed regularly. So I think in any case where a player has been regularly even just heading a ball during a football match, I think we're probably at a stage where they should start being assessed at the end of a football match. Obviously, now we've got the concussion substitute and protocols coming in, and that's going to take some time, I think, for people to understand it and for it to get implemented properly. But it's a step in the right direction to try and achieve a solution that's going to make life safer for players. But I think for those who regularly head a football, we're probably going to get to a stage where we need to assess them afterwards. Good question. Thank you. Rahul says Bale or Son. I would recognise Rahul listening to yesterday's Clash of Correspondents, because I'll say Bale, but my correspondent from Tottenham, Ricky Saunders, I'll say Son. Ricky Saunders would say Bale. So you got different opinions from one fan base there, personally. Ricky makes a very good case for Bale. I think I made a good case for Son and have done earlier this week on other podcasts as well. Chaco says, who is the best striker over 28 and 29, excluding Kane and Watkins? It's probably Bamford. Not enough faith in Major, particularly with City, obviously, first as well. I think you've got to be something fruity to go for Neil Maupay, haven't you? Other than that, go with a man who you can trust in any fixture, which is obviously Antonio. So I think if I had to buy one this week, for me personally, because of the game week, and that might influence where I said Bamford over Antonio for Buna earlier, I would more want Bamford for 30 than Antonio. And I think that's possible and influence actually in my thinking to that answer, because generally speaking, I would normally say Antonio any fixture. So Antonio, someone tell Buna I've changed my mind. Antonio instead of Bamford. Antonio, there's your answer. You can trust him in any game. Nerd says, bring Kane in for a hit by removing Cancelo, have Son. No, that's not be getting desperate for this sort of thing. Kane's not going to go off on Sunday. Can he score? Yeah, of course. He's got a great record against Arsenal. It's well known. But worth a hit for this week? No, in my opinion. I don't know and no Spurs player is worth a hit this week, honestly. Stanik said, what's inside Pep's head? Tactics, system, defense, his misses. Has he got kids? Probably them as well. John O'Sullivan, hi James, what are you and such favourite bands or singers? Oh, I am so out of touch with music. I couldn't tell you what's going on with that. I've never been a huge music buff. Serge, I can't really answer for him. I think he's like Celine Dion, people like that. I think Serge's thing generally. Me, I was quite into new metal in sort of the late 90s, early noughties, and haven't really taken much notice of what's been going on since. So, I mean, I like bands like Linkin Park. I liked alternatives like Radiohead, Oasis and stuff growing up. I was a big fan of Prodigy. They're the best I've seen live. So, somewhere between rock and indie. I think new metal, rock, indie. Somewhere in the middle of there is probably where I would fall. I was joking about Celine Dion, by the way, so just don't get your knickers in a twist. FPL Prem tips that a captaincy decision is tough this week, so I can understand the Werner shout. If I could captain a team, it would be Chelsea. Philip Sukta says, hi, James. Thoughts on Ederson to Martinez as one of my 2 free transfers, rolling the other one. Have Cancelo and Gundogan from City otherwise, and with Martinez, 8 players for game week 29. No free hit or wild card. Thank you. The problem with Martinez is, if you've got, it's great, and I don't see where you'd be leaving for any reason. They do have a tough run of fixtures, Aston Villa, in the running, which is somewhat off-putting. I mean, Liverpool 31, Man City 32. I think to cover it, that game week 30 is the most likely game week for Aston Villa and Everton, but then I did previously think it was game week 28 in fairness, but I think we're looking at sooner rather than later, so the prospect of a double in 30 is very attractive as well. So on short term, I think, yes, it's fine. If you want to keep it till the end of the season, I would possibly consider some alternatives. And I think you could do worse than Areola at a cheaper price, actually. But then it's not the right week to go Ederson to Areola. So I think by default, if you're stuck, and I mentioned obviously looking at goalkeeper changes, I'm fine with that if you want to go to Martinez. Gary Mantle says, hi, James, non-fantasy. Thanks, I'm already pleased. What are you like at Spurs matches? Talk to those around you through the game. Too busy singing, shouting, encouragement, abuse, nervous silence. I've never had that question before, Gary. That's great. Not to that extent, anyway. I love that question. I am a singer at heart. but not. I used to be mad in the 20s. I was like a guarantee that I would have a sore throat at the end of a big game. Guarantee. It's not quite the same now. I've got to think about my vocal cords for this shit, haven't I? But yeah, I'm a singer. Do I talk to other people around me? No. Because I don't like 90% of Tottenham fans. It's talk fucking shit. People go to games who sit where I sit, feel quite self-entitled by what they watch on the football field and think they know best. Some of the shit I hear around me, if I engaged in a conversation with these people, I would lose my fucking mind. Because most of them haven't got a clue, not a single clue. So I tend to avoid people. It's the honest truth. So no, there's no one round Spurs who I see a face and go, all right, how you doing? I want to talk to them. Not really. Obviously sit next to my dad and stuff. So if there's something I think that's tactically worth mentioning, I'll mention it to dad. Watch out for this or something. But generally, it's just support the same, and you get lost in the moment. So that's mainly what I'm like. Good question, though, Gary. Thanks for that. Alex Allegretta says, morning, James. Hope all is well. Good luck for the game, and to you too. Finn Jacobson says, Kane for captain or Aubameyang? Isn't normally home team winning North London derby? Yes, Tottenham haven't won there in the league since 2010-11. They did win there in the League Cup a couple of years ago under Pochettino in the quarterfinals. And both teams picked quite strong teams, actually. If I was captain one, I think it'd be Kane, I think. Part because he's still going to be popular this week. I would probably feel I was forced into Kane, I think, if I owned both. I think Kane's the better call. He'll be above Aubameyang on my top 10 captaincy picks on my stream later today. I don't think Aubameyang will make that 10, to be honest. It's part reflective of ownership. So it'd be Kane. David Jones says, if Spurs could sign one player this summer, who would you take? Haaland to play with Kane, and then we wouldn't need 8 new players. We'd just get it forward to them as quickly as possible. Mbappe, he's all right. We'll just go 6-0-4 every week, I think. Any player. A world-class dominant centre-back. Yeah, Virgil van Dijk. There you go. I can sign any player, can't I? He'll be back by then. I'll take Virgil van Dijk. It's not realistic, is it? And I don't know at the moment what is realistic for Tottenham in terms of transfers and available spending this summer. But I think centre-back has kind of become the priority now. Just on the basis of keeping Mourinho, actually, it's probably the priority. Pasky B89. Hi, mate. Sorry, is Salah a good captain as a bit of a differential? I've kind of already covered that off, but thanks for the question. And we'll finish with Blake Young. In terms of who else to lose rather than burn, it would be Salah or Dean, but I want both for 28 with 3 transfers. I have a strong 11 for 29, but I only have 3 transfers if I make one today. Well, there you go. You got the update of what Blake's doing with his team. Thanks for your questions, guys. Sorry to those that I haven't got to. I will be back on YouTube again at 5:30 p.m. UK time. I must disappear because we've got a Patreon podcast to record as well. If you'd like to support Planet FPL on Patreon, it's the middle of the month. It's not a bad time to join in. 23 additional podcasts from intermediate tier in March. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, please do so for support of the content, not because you think we're going to make you a better FPL manager. The people in Slack might help you become a better FPL manager, but me and Suj probably won't. Next week's content, I don't know as yet, but it'll probably be People's Poll Monday. Main podcast, I think Tuesday after Wolves versus Liverpool is probably the most likely thing we'll do. Sky Fantasy Wednesday, Thursday's Clash of Correspondence, FPL Seagull, FPL Footballer previewing Brighton and Newcastle next Thursday. And I think we'll probably do the same setup for next week. We'll probably stream at 9 in the morning and then again at 5:30 p.m. But that just leaves me to say, be nice to each other. Good luck for the game week. And for the benefit of those listening on the audio, cue music, please, man. Shut.